purpose of this unit is to provide a basic understanding, both theoretical and practical, of what Indigenous peoples' rights are like in the inter-American human rights system. By the time you complete this unit, you should be able to answer questions like, who are Indigenous peoples? Why are Indigenous rights considered to be human rights? What are the main sources of law which recognize Indigenous rights in international law in general and in the inter-American human rights system in particular? How have Indigenous rights evolved under the inter-American human rights system, and what are the main challenges for the future? But we hope this unit will not only provide you with knowledge and tools to identify terms, sources of law, and legal cases. We hope it will also help you think critically about the inter-American human rights system, its advantages and limitations in protecting Indigenous rights, tensions arising from this protection, and alternatives to the system. After all, this system, important as it may be, is only one instance of an international system protecting Indigenous rights. Before we dive deeper into all these heavy questions, we need to understand the key terms we use in this unit and some of the historical, social, and geographical background to the legal discussion. First, who or what are Indigenous peoples? These pictures tell us something about who these people are, but they don't really give a definition that we can use for legal purposes. Surprisingly, looking at legal sources, we find that there is no precise definition of Indigenous peoples in international law. The common position is that such a definition is unnecessary to protect their rights. The idea is that given the immense diversity of Indigenous peoples in the Americas and around the world, a closed definition will leave some groups out and will include too many groups. However, we can find several useful criteria to determine when a given human group can be considered as an Indigenous people. One treaty that we will consider in the next subsection, the International Labour Organization Convention No. 169, gives us such clues. It notes that people are regarded as Indigenous on account of their descent from the populations which inhabited the country or a geographical region to which the country belongs at the time of conquest or colonization or the establishment of present state boundaries, and who, irrespective of their legal status, retain some or all of their own social, economic, cultural, and political institutions. This definition leads the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights to rely mainly on self-identification of Indigenous peoples as the principal criterion to determining their condition. However, other important characteristics, such as the community's special relationship with the land, are considered. This leads us to the next question. What is unique about Indigenous peoples in the Americas? Latin American countries are in the midst of a hunt for natural resources. This hunt led directly to Indigenous lands, which in many cases enjoy an abundance of oil, gas, and minerals, as well as forests and waterways. Even when Indigenous communities have title on their territories, the law often establishes state ownership over water and resources. As a result, governments grant concessions to companies for exploration and extraction of these lands, projects which account for billions of dollars in revenue and may positively affect the gross national product. However, these projects also leave devastation in Indigenous communities' lands, thus creating a difficult tension between these two paramount interests. To give just one illustration, in the Loreto region of the Peruvian Amazon, there were over 100 oil spills between 2007 and 2011. Rivers have been contaminated and food sources were poisoned, affecting the lives of Indigenous communities in the area. One less definitional issue is important before we move forward. As we continue this unit, notice that Indigenous rights are treated as international human rights. But is this definition so obvious? We could alternatively think of Indigenous peoples as autonomous states who had original sovereignty over their territories and resources before colonizing forces came. As you have seen in previous units, the human rights framework might also raise tensions for protecting Indigenous rights, because it focuses on individual rather than collective rights. We should keep this tension in mind as we go forward to the next subsections. To prepare for our journey through Indigenous rights in the Inter-American system, we recommend you watch the short documentary film in the link below and think about the questions we raised in this introduction.